club takes pleasure in attracting a stellar list of speakers that address today's most relevant issues. The club's place as a refuge for rich discussion and networking has never wavered after 123 seasons.
We are dedicated to encouraging debate on the issues that matter to this city, this province, and this country.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Anita McCuitt, and I'm the president of the Canadian Club Toronto. Today, we're pleased to be joined by Erin O'Toole, the new leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. He's here to discuss his new Conservative vision, putting Canada's interests first and building national solidarity. Based on the number of attendees to this event, it's safe to say that there are a lot of people interested in hearing his vision, so I can't wait. Before we dive into today's topic, a few housekeeping notes. If you find your internet is slow, click here to switch stream. Your video quality may reduce, but the audio should stay strong. We really want your questions today, so if you have questions, just click the questions tab and they will be sent right to our moderator. Thank you to today's event sponsors, Canada Life and Waste Connections of Canada. Thanks to their generous support, today's event is free for all. The Canadian Club is a nonprofit, and we've been gathering people together for 124 years, and it's because of our sponsors that we can continue to do this in today's virtual world. Now to introduce today's speaker. Erin O'Toole was elected as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada in late August of this year. He's been elected 3 times as the MP for Durham and has served as parliamentary secretary to the Minister of International Trade before becoming Minister of Veteran Affairs. Following his remarks, Mr. O'Toole will be joined in conversation by Adrienne Batra, editor-in-chief of the Toronto Sun, and please don't forget to send us those questions. One of the club's traditions that has not changed in this virtual world is the toast that we make to our country at the start of every event. So if you have a glass nearby, please raise it to the screen and give a toast to Canada. To Canada.
Canada.
Wonderful. Mr. O'Toole, I'll turn the Canadian Club podium over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Anita, and thank you to the Canadian Club for this incredible honor and opportunity. As a lawyer in Toronto for many years, I attended many great and informative Canada Club lunches. And when I got into politics, I always said, if I ever became the leader of my party, wouldn't it be great to take the podium in Toronto at the Royal York or a prestigious location and give my first speech to a Toronto audience from your podium? Well, that's come true, kind of. I'm actually here in my living room giving it virtually. And so congratulations, Anita, on pivoting during your presidency, just as myself and our team are pivoting within COVID to speak at this prestigious club. Friends, you might have come here expecting a classic politician giving the classic speech on why I'm good and why the other guy is bad, on how he's clueless and only I've got a plan, on how this pandemic is hurting us, but that we'll all just get through it. But this crowd has heard speeches like that countless times before. Instead, I've come here to tell you something you don't often hear. I've come here with a message a message given to me by hundreds of thousands of moms, dads, students, and workers across this great country. I want to tell you that everything is not okay. Real wages have not risen in Canada since the 1970s. Millions of workers have lost their jobs. In fact, Canada has the highest unemployment rate in the G7. Even before the pandemic hit, half of Canadian families were just $200 away from insolvency. Middle-class Canada has been betrayed by the elites on every level. Political elites, financial elites, cultural elites. These elites have only one set of values centered on unchecked globalization, political correctness, and while middle-class Canadians have had another set rooted in family, home, and nation. Private sector union membership has collapsed. In the 1950s, 1 in 3 private sector workers were union members. Today, it's closer to 1 in 25. It may surprise you to hear a conservative bemoan the decline of private sector union membership, but this was an essential part of the balance between what was good for business and what was good for employees. Today, that balance is dangerously disappearing. Too much power is in the hands of a few corporate and financial elites who have been only too happy to outsource jobs abroad. It's now expected of a shareholder to ask a CEO, why are we paying a worker in Oshawa $30 an hour when we could be paying one in China 50 cents an hour? And while that shareholder may see gains, Canada gets poorer. Full-time employment, a regular, steady salary, a pension. These sound straight out of a bygone era. A generation ago, married couples with steady jobs and with homes they paid off before they retired assumed their kids would flourish. Now we've come to accept those as quaint notions from a distant past. Many parents I speak with worry that their children, particularly in the Toronto area, will never own their own home. It used to be that a job was the gateway into the middle class. Increasingly, especially for younger people, a job can be a dead end, an endless cycle of contract work with no benefits, no security, no obligations on the part of the employers. Do we really want a nation of Uber drivers? Do we really want to abandon a generation of Canadians to some form of Darwinian struggle? A future without the possibility of home ownership, a sense of inevitability. While some benefit, millions are losing hope, and resentment is growing. I come from a traditional conservative background. Low taxes, small government, personal freedom, personal responsibility, helping your neighbor, free markets. I believe in all of those things. But I also grew up in a working class community. My hometown of Bowmanville, Ontario is a GM town. My dad worked there. Our neighbors were auto workers. There was a sense of loyalty to the hometown. It's ingrained in me. I still drive a Buick. Over the last couple of decades, I've seen parts of my hometown and the region hollowed out. Jobs left and never came back for some families. The sword of Damocles hangs over the head of my community and many others like it. We are in deeply uncertain times, living in a way that is strange, worrying, and unsure. Canada's Conservatives know that the pandemic has caused economic and social upheaval without precedent in our history. So our first concern is to ensure the health, safety, and well-being of Canadians, especially those who are the most vulnerable. We recognize that unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures. A Conservative government will fight COVID-19 with every means at its disposal. It will do its duty to secure our borders from the virus. It will support those who are fighting on the front lines. It will help those whose lives have been upended financially. socially, and mentally. We understand the need for deficit spending at a time of national emergency. This is nothing new. We spent money during the First World War. We did the same during the Great Depression and again in World War II. Very recently, Western economies responded to the 2008 financial crisis with massive investments. Our Conservative government led the charge in rolling out a responsible, smart stimulus package. I don't like deficits, but the alternatives were much worse. We had to do what needed to be done. This is not something I would support in normal times, but these aren't normal times. We are facing more than a health crisis. We are facing the greatest economic crisis of our lifetime. What I can tell you, however, is that Canada's Conservatives will bring back certainty and stability. While the Liberals want to build back better, Conservatives will ensure that we build back stronger, smarter, more inclusively. The Liberal agenda is to launch a risky experiment with our economy. Exploiting understandable concerns for the environment, they want to implement vast green energy experiments and operate the sharpest leftward shift of the federal government since Pierre Trudeau. Now, I'm not joking. There is a reasonable way to do things, and there is an ideological way to do things. In Ontario, the Liberals spent billions pursuing a green agenda without creating jobs. In fact, we lost thousands of jobs. Worse, there was no meaningful benefits to the environment. To me, that's negligence. Now, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals want to do to Canada what Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne did to Ontario. As a father, as a Conservative, I want to ensure we have a green future. But can we get our economy back on its feet and create the wealth needed to help us lower emissions and mitigate against the impact of climate change? Canada's national economy isn't a laboratory for trendy left-wing experiments. It's the driving force behind growth, prosperity, opportunity, and importantly, our ability to help those who truly need it. We can't afford to toy with our economy. It used to be assumed our kids would flourish, that they would have a better life than their parents did. Now we fear our children and our families will be overcome by social and economic dysfunction. We worry that our children will not find their place in a globalized economy. It's time Conservatives and Canadians took inequality seriously. Mr. Trudeau and the Liberals like to say we are all in this together, but are we really? Under the Trudeau Liberals, the country is more divided than ever. Divided between the winners and losers in the global economy. Those whom Jeff Rubin, former chief economist of CIBC World Markets, calls the expendables. Between those who have had the opportunity to pursue higher learning and those who have not. Between Bay Street and Mean Street. Between those with a salary, benefits, and pension and those without. Between those with liberal connections and outsiders who have to play by the rules. We can renew Canadian solidarity, but it will not be easy. Powerful forces continue to defend the status quo. Many of the rich, well-connected, and well-educated have been largely insulated from the enormous economic upheavals of the last decade. In fact, there's many that have benefited from the upheaval. Have a look at the net worth of Jeff Bezos. For them, the pandemic has been an inconvenience, not an existential crisis. Why would they want change? But we must change. Because if we don't, less reasonable forces will do it for us. We made a mistake in allowing ourselves to de-industrialize totally. 30 years ago, the Western world's political, financial, and business elite made a bet. We would allow China to have unfair access to our market while they protected their own. Then, China was poor, underdeveloped, and largely disconnected from the world. Once it became a rich and prosperous country, we hoped it would turn into a good actor, would democratize, take human rights seriously, liberalize, and play by global rules. We all know that this has not happened. State-owned juggernauts, Orwellian surveillance technology, cyber theft on an industrial scale, hostage diplomacy, and increasing human rights abuses within its borders, and increasingly with its wider sphere of influence. In 2014, Canada's National Research Council was hacked by China, and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of intellectual property appears to have been stolen. Think of this as your intellectual property, gone to your competitor at no cost and at no consequence. I'm a firm believer in capitalism and free enterprise. It has brought liberty to millions and has raised the global standard of living. It is far superior to socialism. It will always lead to the most efficient outcome. But every now and then, the most efficient outcome does not always perfectly align with our national interest. It is more efficient and affordable to make drugs in China. It is more efficient and affordable to make masks, ventilators, and gowns in China. But as we have learned, to our cost, it is not in our national interest to make those things in China. It might be okay for flip-flops and patio furniture. It's not okay for things that are vital to our security and increasingly to our prosperity. So I will say this: when the most efficient outcome does not align with our national interest, a Conservative government will ensure that the national interest comes first. Free markets alone won't solve all our problems. GDP growth alone is not the be-all and end-all of politics. The goal of economic policy is more than just wealth creation. We need policies to shore up the core units of society: family, neighborhood, nation. Canada is a community, not a corporation with 37 million shareholders. What economic indicator is more relevant to the average Canadian family, whether in Bowmanville or any town in this country? Is it GDP growth, or would that family be worried about the rate of unemployment? We need policies that build solidarity, not just wealth. The well-being of Canadian families is at the core of strong communities that in turn build a strong and prosperous country. Our goal must be the common good of all Canadians. The conditions which allow people, either as groups or as individuals, to reach their full potential. Our goal must be to release the human spirit and the potential of individual people, families, and groups, to nurture, mobilize, and encourage generosity, talent, patriotism, and a sense of community. We must provide the right framework to create wealth so that we may give back to those who need it the most: our frontline workers, our teachers, our seniors. I want to grow the tent of who can be successful in this country, and I want to expand our definition of success. But for this, I need your help and the help of thousands of Canadians. I was 18 years old when I joined the military to serve Canada. Today, at 47, I stand before you renewed in my patriotism, renewed in my optimism for this country. Together, we can work to ensure that we pass on to our children and grandchildren the same great country that we inherited. It's up to all of us, the leaders on this call and your thousands of employees. Let's rededicate ourselves to this country. Stir up your true patriot love to keep Canada a beacon of liberty and opportunity for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. O'Toole, for sharing your thoughts. We'll give you a chance to step over to your fireplace so that you can have a true fireside chat with Adrienne. Audience, please don't forget to send us through your questions. Don't be shy. We know you have them. Adrienne will ask as many as she can, and I know she's got some tough questions of her own. How are you doing, Adrienne?
I'm doing great, Anita. Looking forward to our chat with Mr. O'Toole. And as you had mentioned earlier, clearly by the numbers that have participated today with the Canadian Clubs event, this is a very important discussion that, a lot of Canadians want to hear from what Mr. O'Toole has to say. He could potentially be the next prime minister of our country, and at an unprecedented time. I know that word seems to be overused, but I've got some questions for him. A lot of the questions are coming in quite fast and furious, so please keep sending them in. Just in terms of our housekeeping, you know how to participate with us, for many of you that have done so in the past at the Canadian Club. I will do my best to answer as many as I possibly can. We had asked Mr. O'Toole, I'm sure he could have kept going on in his speech, but we asked him to keep his time tight so we'd had an opportunity to put questions to him directly and have that conversation with him. And so we're quite looking forward to that. As you can see, I've tried to set up my fireside here to make this as true as possible. I'm getting a little hot now, but we are, but the temperature is cooling outside. So I guess it's kind of a nice balance.
Occupational hazard. Yeah, I know we have viewers from all across Canada today, but it's definitely a crisp October day here in Toronto. So fireplace is a nice feature to have.
Absolutely. And considering we're not going to be having much of a Halloween, everyone's going to be cranking up their fireplaces and doing things indoors. But as I said, please continue to send in your questions. I know Mr. O'Toole doesn't shy away from anything too much. So anything that you've got on your mind that you would like to ask the Leader of the Opposition, he's here. This is we have a captive audience, and I know he's quite anxious to speak directly to you about what his plans are, what his party's plans are for the future of this country. And we might even talk to him a little bit about what it was like having COVID-19 and during a time when so many millions of Canadians are being affected by this. So this is firsthand knowledge that he has that he can share with us as well.
I see you're wearing your poppy, as I've got mine.
I am wearing my poppy. Yes.
I just learned from Mr. O'Toole that actually it launches today at noon. So this year's poppies just launched.
Yes. And as a former military officer myself, I of course had to wear mine because I wouldn't want Mr. O'Toole to call me out for not recognizing, of course, the important service of our men and women in uniform and the sacrifices they made in this, and these things become so pointed at a time like this. So it's important.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, hopefully we will. There he is.
I see.
Perfect
there he
timing.
is.
It's
Wonderful.
Good to be back. My fire behind me is not quite as uniform as your perfect fire, Adrienne. But this is a virtual fireside chat.
Well, Erin, those are the things that, you have to sacrifice when you move into Stornoway, which it looks like you've settled in nicely. So thank you very much for joining us, and I appreciate the comments and you keeping them in terms of the time frame that we have, because we know everybody's busy and the like. And so I look forward to having this discussion with you and I just said this, the overused word is unprecedented, and you had COVID-19. Tell us a little bit about that. It wasn't just, numbers that are coming from public health. You were one of those numbers. What was that like?
Yes, and on one day, we were one of the thousands of numbers in lineups for hours and had to be turned away from testing because Canada doesn't have rapid testing. All of our allies do. We don't have it. But Adrienne, fortunately, my experience with COVID was rather mild. My wife, Rebecca, hers was more moderate. So yet another thing she'll be reminding me of for years that I brought home in politics was the coronavirus. But we are really blessed. We had people dropping off food, sending us notes, saying prayers. We really felt like almost the whole country was with us. And fortunately, the kids avoided it. We social distanced in our home. So it was a stressful time. It lets me know what families are going through, but we were very fortunate we didn't have the serious health impacts that many families have.
Well, we are grateful that for all of our political leaders, anybody that has, of course, suffered from it and has recovered, because you have a very big job ahead of you. And that is, of course, holding this government to account for the money that they are spending, the programs that they are implementing. And sometimes this government doesn't make that job easy, nor it's not their intention to do so, but it's not your job as the opposition leader to make their job easy either. So let's go back to last week. I want to ask about the confidence motion and the brinksmanship that this country was put upon. Do you feel that when you put forward that motion to have a committee being formed, an opposition party motion to a committee to be formed, when the government decided that that was a motion of confidence, do you feel that perhaps maybe you overstepped your hand, or you overplayed your hand, or did the Liberal Party, call your bluff?
No, the Liberal Party showed that their priority is their electoral success, not the well-being of Canadians in the middle of the pandemic. Adrienne, we were talking at the beginning, the Canadian Club's been around for 124 years. Not in Canada's entire history has a government ever deemed an opposition motion to create a committee as a matter of confidence. It was unprecedented, to use that term. It was also uncalled for. We've been asking reasonable questions about how a $100 million plus program was set up with the We Charity and with Mr. Morneau, who's since resigned, many other, the Trudeau family and other people, in the middle of a pandemic, no oversight. They prorogued Parliament to avoid these questions. They've been filibustering every committee. Canadians should ask. We have some reasonable questions about transparency, and they're willing to literally prorogue Parliament to avoid it. So we did not think they would force an election over that committee, but we were also going to show that bullying tactics aren't going to have us stop doing our job, which is to hold the government to account, to ask questions on ethics and other things, and to propose a vision for Canadians. So part of my speech today is a bit of our vision. Some of our policies are rolling out, but we're also going to hold to account what we see as a continued approach of arrogance and entitlement with the Trudeau government, with Mr. Trudeau himself. So it was not the showdown we expected, but Mr. Singh's move really took the election opportunity away from Mr. Trudeau. So we'll see if he does this again.
So let's dive into a little bit more of the policy. The night that you became leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, and again, in an extraordinary time, running a leadership campaign coast to coast in this country, a big country, not an easy thing to do, but you were victorious. And you have had the opportunity, of course, to speak to your caucus, speak to Canadians that night. But a lot of Canadians still don't know who you are. They don't know much about your background and who and what you stand for. Though you have had, an opportunity in the course of the last month or so to reach out, get to know Canadians, and have them get to know you. But this is your chance to do that now here, rather than sort of the notion of what many Canadians who have not voted Conservative in the past and weren't and are not willing to mark their ballot for your party. What is it that you offer that's different than what they may have heard in the past that they may feel is the same old tired rhetoric? What is it that you have to offer that's different?
Well, first off, thank you for reminding me of my speech at 1:30 in the morning when
I was live on air too, so I was there.
I wanted more Canadians to get to know me, and my first big speech is in the middle of the night when everyone's sleeping. But we use that speech, Adrienne, as an opportunity for us to invite more people to take a second look at the Conservative Party. I want more women, more cultural communities, more union members, more students looking at the Conservative Party again. Some of you may have voted for us in the past. Some of you may never have voted for us in the past. We want to build a big tent that, as I said in my speech, makes sure that more Canadians are part of our rebuilding to build a stronger Canada, not to build back by picking winners and losers as Mr. Trudeau does. And the big difference with me, I joke often that Mr. Trudeau's birth was covered in Maclean's magazine. Mine certainly wasn't. But I would bet you everyone on this call had the same background. We've all worked hard to achieve what we have in our life. We've always tried to help, whether it's charitable causes or other things. So I'm a kid that grew up in the Toronto suburbs who was raised to work hard, strive to be my best, and to help others. That led me to join the military. I served for 12 years in all parts of this country, this amazing country. I then went to law school. My wife helped put me through. She was working. We had a house. We didn't have much. And then I took a job as a lawyer in Toronto with large law firms and then with Procter & Gamble. So I've got a lot of private sector experience. But to whom much is given, much is expected, Adrienne. When I started my corporate career, Canada was at war in Afghanistan. So I worked with many friends in Toronto to start the True Patriot Love Foundation. Whether it's following as part of a team, I've done that. Now it's time for me to lead our party and I think our country out of a very challenging position we're in. So I don't feel I'm entitled to this job. I think I've worked hard to show Canadians I've got the experience, the judgment, the compassion to do this job at a tough time for our country.
We've got a lot of questions coming in, and I'm going to try to condense a few of them to sort of cover more broadly a number of the topics that Canadians do want to hear from you, Erin. Notably, this is a time when a lot of Canadians clearly want their parliamentarians, all levels of government, to be working together. We are in a global pandemic. We really are all in this together. In order for openings or get out of phase 2 to get back to opening our communities up, we all have to do our part. And so that also speaks to Parliament Hill. And so if you were in and I know that you are in regular contact with the government, but if you were to talk to Justin Trudeau and say, all right, what do we need to do to get Canada's economy going post-pandemic, or even the situation which we are in right now? What advice, based on the fact that Canadians want everybody to get along right now, what advice would you give Mr. Trudeau on getting our economy going?
Well, I'll share the first advice I gave him on my first call the morning after I became leader. And in my second call with him was that my concerns about national unity right now, the separatist Bloc Québécois has more seats than Jagmeet Singh's party. They're at third place. They were not even an official party when I was in the cabinet in the Conservative government. We have a Western separation movement that has more members or more people signed up interested in it than there are members of Mr. Trudeau's own Liberal Party, yet he downplays that. What we have to do is unleash our economy. We have to be proud of what's built here, our resources, our resourcefulness, our industrial capacity, our intellectual property. We need to unleash private sector investment. We need to be a place where projects can be seen as getting done. And we need to recognize that our resource industry is the world leader in environmental and social governance. They're reducing emissions, carbon intensity. They are world leaders in partnering with Indigenous businesses. Any Canadian resource that is replaced on the world market is replaced by someone that doesn't embrace those values. So the well-being of a family is a job for mom and dad. The family's doing well, the community's doing well, the country's doing well. So the social experiments of building back better and hashtag green this, it often doesn't work, as we saw with the Liberals in Ontario, but it also divides and gives many families less opportunities. So I'm going to fight for better trade outcomes. We never should have had steel and aluminum tariffs applied on Canada. That was a major miss by Mr. Trudeau and Minister Freeland. We're going to really try and build up this economy. And my advice to him was stop picking winners and losers. Ottawa should often get out of the way. Let provinces, let the private sector flourish.
You mentioned in your opening remarks, Erin, that this is a time when you certainly would support the amount of money that the government has been putting to Canadians. I've said it in the past. We pay very high taxes in this country for a strong social safety net, and this is a time when Canadians need some of their money back. And so there has been an inordinate amount of programming, and not necessarily well thought out programming, but nonetheless, money has gone out the door very, very quickly because Canadians needed it. But moving forward, we have over $1 trillion debt now, and the deficit it's hard to keep up because it's very, very high. Traditionally, conservatives, of course, look for a fiscal conservative platform. They want to rein in spending. Don't think that this is the time. Canadians don't want to hear about austerity. So how do you offer that notion of remaining true to a fiscally conservative principle, yet appreciating the fact that Canadians still it's going to take a very long time to recover from this, and government involvement in the economy is still very, very strong and needed?
Well, first, let me clarify one thing. We don't support the amount of their deficit by any stretch of the imagination. We supported the fact that, of course, there would be a deficit run. And I've said many times, and the Liberals try and spin this, but anyone in the crowd that has a business orientation knows that I'm right. The Liberals mismanaged the wage subsidy and the rent supports. We needed to keep as many jobs going as possible, put them into hibernation for the time of COVID. Instead, they bungled the handling of that. They said wage subsidy was going to be 10%. No business that had to shut down could say we're going to keep our employment, our workforce at just 10%. And they had to introduce a second bill with our assistance. But they introduced the CERB so quickly, put no rules on it, no verification. Then they expanded it, put all students on it. They've spent dramatically more than needed with poor economic outcomes. That's why we have the highest unemployment in the G7. They didn't preserve jobs and economic activity, and now they're not sure what to do. So they just keep kicking the CERB down the road further, and that's holding us back. It's also disrupting the labor market. And so we have to learn from what they got wrong in the first wave of the pandemic. You've heard me say this in the House of Commons, whether it's on the border, whether it's on rapid tests, whether it's on economic programming. Everything should be focused upon preserving our economic potential so that when we have a vaccine or when we get through the next wave of this second wave, we can fire up very, very quickly. That should be our approach. Growing the GDP, having more people working, and getting a balance to our fiscal situation, a balance over the next decade. Ramp down program spending in a way that's fair and equitable. But if people aren't working when they come off CERB, we're going to see a prolonged debt crisis in Canada, and we're going to see more capital leave our country rather than come to it. So our focus is going to be bringing balance to the fiscal scene over a period of time that's fair, and getting people working from coast to coast to coast, and not picking winners and losers like Mr. Trudeau often does.
Mr. O'Toole, I want to continue on that vein of fairness, because a question has come in from one of our participants, and I'm going to read the question directly to you. I'm from the Dokas First Nation. It's not lost on me and other members of the Indigenous communities that your first question as Leader of the Opposition was about the government's commitment to reconciliation. Mr. O'Toole, this participant would like to know what your vision is for a more inclusive Canada.
Well, I love this question. Reconciliation is very important to me. I worked on pro bono issues with the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business as a lawyer in Toronto before I ran for office. I've always had good relations, whether with Chief Atleo or Chief Bellegarde or Chief LaRocca in my own riding. For me, reconciliation is about participation in the economy, opportunity for young Indigenous Canadians today. And I think a lot of Indigenous communities from in the North, in the West, and the East, they want to see partnerships and a role of shared leadership, not more bureaucrats in Ottawa who can't get the rollout of a lobster fishery right after 21 years and after us telling the Trudeau government for months that tensions were rising in Nova Scotia. Why are we not having more Indigenous leaders with law degrees, MBAs, starting businesses? They should be running some of the governance and some of the long-term programs for prosperity of First Nations. So you're going to see a very strong commitment. I'm going to hold myself to a high standard. And Mr. Trudeau loves symbolic tweets and photo ops. But if you look, there's very rarely any follow-up. And some of his anti-energy policies, like Bill C-69, the Arctic exploration ban, they have hurt Indigenous communities more than any other Canadian. So how can we partner with Indigenous communities for opportunity, prosperity, and how can we do a better job on health outcomes, children, education? It will be a very high priority for me, and I'll want to partner with Indigenous leaders to help me do it and help hold me to account for it.
With respect to one of the things that you ran on as leader, becoming a leader of the Conservative Party, and this ties into, Canadians' bottom line. When we are going through this global pandemic, so many Canadians have lost their job. Affordability, between everything from housing to home heating to just living and paying your cell phone bill, is becoming a challenge. Day after day after day, things are becoming more expensive, and too many Canadians have no way to afford cell phone bills, for example. Yet in this day and age, there's nothing we can do yet stay connected to our family members. So we need that access. What you had suggested was that you were going to open the airline and wireless services for Canadians to foreign competition. Can you give us a practical sense of what does that actually look like? And so will someone actually be able to see a reduced a fee in terms of affordability when it comes to those services?
Yes, that's my intention, Adrienne. I think competition can drive that. Obviously, COVID changes the circumstances quite dramatically, mm-hmm. but we also have to make sure we work with the Americans to make sure that if we have an open sky arrangement for airlines, or if we allow foreign ownership of telecommunication companies at a higher level, a controlling level, that there's equal access to those markets. Often you'll see the US subsidizes and protects more than any other country, mm-hmm. A great free market country, but often very, very protectionist. And so we have to break that down. But could you imagine a solution where the vast majority of Canada's population is along the Canada-US border? Perhaps there would be a really good opportunity for some of our carriers, both telecommunications and airline, to take advantage of that, because their infrastructure is in the same general space. They may not mm-hmm. want to compete in New Mexico, but Michigan might be a very attractive market without the capital requirements that some others might need. So we would want to do this provided they weren't constrained from competing, vice versa. When I talk about China, Adrienne, when I talk about global trade post-pandemic, I want to see free and fair trade amongst mm-hmm. free countries. And I really don't think the free world should allow free riders like China to break the rules, abuse transship steel and aluminum to our detriment. Our aluminum's the greenest in the world. So.
I'm going to hold you right there, because I've got a whole, the
Perfect.
Questions are coming in fast and furious. My iPad can't even keep up. And there's a lot of questions with respect to China. And I know our time is getting a little tight. So I want to get a couple of more questions in from the audience, which will tie into, our relationship with our foreign countries all over the world. One of which is November 4th. When November 4th comes, which is next Wednesday, how does a potential future Prime Minister O'Toole deal with either President Donald Trump or President Joe Biden? What does that look like for Canada?
It doesn't matter who wins the election, Adrienne, because the two most important issues facing the Canadian Prime Minister of any stripe, of any era, national unity and relations with the United States. I think Mr. Trudeau's mistake has been you are either BFFs with the US president or you're at odds with the US president. It is not about the person. As Prime Minister of Canada, I'm not there as Erin O'Toole, building Erin O'Toole's brand. I'm there to fight for the interests of Canadians. Job creators, our military and our security partners. We have NORAD with the United States. We're the only integrated security partner. A Canadian was on duty at NORAD on 9/11, for example. So we have familial, business, security, people-to-people ties that predate all presidents and prime ministers. So it's up to the Prime Minister of Canada to work with whoever the president is, who the American people choose, and forge a common national interest. It may be difficult but tweeting at another country, trying to juxtapose yourself against them, they notice that in Washington, and it actually fails Canadians from coast to coast. So it might play well on Twitter, which seems to be Mr. Trudeau's preoccupation, but it's hurting the aluminum plant in Saguenay and in Kitimat, BC. You know, the aluminum in Quebec was so important to the US in the World War II war effort. They helped build Bagotville and the base to defend it. Yet we had security tariffs applied on our goods. So for me, forging a strong relationship with a President Trump or a President Biden will be important, because I'm there to fight for Canadians, not to fight for attention.
Well, we certainly know President Trump likes to do his conveying of policy through Twitter as well. So maybe that's the chosen platform for many of these political leaders. And I was going to try to put you on the spot for making a prediction of who it will be on November 3rd when the Americans do vote. But you're probably you were probably ready for that question, and you're going to tell me that you're not. No one can predict it, and you're going to work with whoever is elected. So I'm going to leave that one for a moment, and let's talk a little bit more about our footing on the international stage. The current health minister, Patty Hajdu, has at the beginning of the pandemic was really quite cozy with the Chinese government, not really wanting to hold them accountable for any of their actions, be it for COVID-19 or any of their unfair labor practices, whatever it may be. She's recently changed her tune. Last week, Patty Hajdu said that if China has been not been forthcoming with the world in terms of COVID-19, then they should be held accountable. You have been saying this for a very, very long time. So we now also are coming up on 700 days when the two Michaels have been captured and basically held hostage by the Chinese Communist Party. How do we, as Canadians who have come to expect and appreciate low-cost goods, yet holding the Chinese government accountable when we know that they have no problem whatsoever putting on tariffs, shutting down trade, and doing those things? How do you balance that, holding them accountable while still continuing to have normalized relations?
Well, first, we have to also make sure we diversify our export markets and build partnerships, particularly in the Indo-Pacific. I think there's tremendous opportunity in India, the world's largest democracy and ally, a partner of Canada. Relations have gone downhill under Mr. Trudeau, but Vietnam, Indonesia, growing trade with South Korea, Japan, as well as more work with our European partners. We need a free trade deal with the United Kingdom. So there's opportunity for us to make up the displacement that's going to occur with China. But Minister Hajdu appears to be doing the same thing Mr. Trudeau did. He said he admired the basic dictatorship when he became prime minister because it gets things done. He said he wanted a free trade agreement. Now, with our strong questioning on it, they appear to be changing tune because they've run into the reality that the global consensus on China, the Clinton administration allowed them into the WTO. We hope that more and more engagement would lead to better human rights, better rule of law, all better outcomes. It has gone the opposite way, Adrienne, and I know you know that. And so what we have to do is work with our allies so that Canada can't be isolated as a smaller economy, as China likes to do, because that's the way the Communist Party operates, is leverages through economic disruption, through hostage diplomacy. And it's up to us to not show that that bullying tactic will work. The Five Eyes Security Partnership I've offered is the perfect scenario for this. Australia has actually been more assertive with respect to China, and they're in the direct sphere of influence. New Zealand, the United Kingdom, the United States, together, we are a very large economic force. We're a security force. We're already an intelligence sharing alliance. We are the only country in that Five Eyes relationship that has not clearly stated that Huawei will not be part of our 5G infrastructure. So we have to have serious policies that recognize both the opportunity, but the incredible risks with the communist-led Chinese government. And I've said Magnitsky sanctions would be an approach that I would use to the hostage diplomacy, because I feel for the families and for Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. It's horrible to think what they've been through. Canada is with them, and we're going to be with them by being strong like they are. And to do that, we need to stand up. We all teach that to our kids: respect people, but also don't let bullies bully their way. And hopefully, the state leadership in Beijing will respond better to strength and principle than they have to fawning for economic opportunity. So I really call on corporate Canada to be a part of this. We can open new markets. We can show that our values are not for sale.
Do you think that we should make the prisoner exchange and return and give up the Huawei executive that's being held in British Columbia? Would that secure the release of the two Michaels?
We should never do that. That's a case of allowing the bully to show these tactics work. Maybe if we had kidnapped 30 people, Canada would have capitulated earlier. It's tough, Adrienne, no question. Mr. Trudeau even changed the Canadian position with respect to hostage takings around the world. And, there's some think that Canadian lives were the result of it. So what we have to do is be resolute and partner. And right now, after 5 years of Mr. Trudeau, our bilateral relationships around the world are in tatters with our closest allies, Australia, New Zealand, when Mr. Trudeau didn't show up for Trans-Pacific Partnership meetings. Japan was also outraged. The US, the UK, Italy, India imposed tariffs after the disastrous trip there. So we've got to show that a principled, serious Canada is on the world stage again. And I will do that. Someone that has served in uniform, someone who has worked in global trade and commerce. I think they'll see a less known, perhaps, but serious prime minister and the Canada that people used to rely on to be in their corner.
And we certainly thank you for your service, Mr. O'Toole. All right, just a couple of quick questions here, and I know that our time is nearly the end. A question from one of our participants has to do with a comment that you made following the 2019 federal election. The Conservatives were obviously, they had the scandal-plagued Liberal government, notably Mr. Trudeau himself, but kind of missed a wide open net. One of the reasons that you had suggested that there was very little environmental policy coming from your side of the aisle, and that a lot of Canadians were uncomfortable with that. So what do you say to those that are looking for from the Conservative Party, a strong environmental policy that resonates within those communities where, frankly, you need the support in order to form a government?
Thanks. Great question. Now, I didn't say any comment about open net. That was someone else. But
I may have paraphrased a little bit.
I have said countless times that we have to learn from why Canadians didn't show their trust in us in 15 and 19. I've said publicly, I think part of it, we didn't articulate our vision on the environment, on emission reduction clearly enough. And we were defined by our opponents as not caring. This is a situation where, as leader, I did work on environmental issues as a lawyer, even hosted an environmental luncheon series. And I think we can get the balance right to support a strong economy and economic growth, including in the resource sector and other sectors, while also having an approach to emission reduction. Canadians will see a thoughtful and serious approach to both emission reduction and overall environmental conservation and other issues in our platform. We will have to earn back some trust. I see that, Adrienne, and this is the military and private sector person in me. You should always be in a state of continuous improvement. We are known to be good economic stewards. I think Canadians know that after the disastrous state of our finances and the high taxes and Warren Buffett investors calling Canada a political risk, the Conservatives can bring that certainty, that stability, and that growth back. But I want them to also know that the environment is important, Indigenous reconciliation is important, standing up for the rights of women, the LGBTQ community, I've tried to express that right from that speech at 1:30 in the morning. I want more Canadians of all those backgrounds to take another look at the Conservative Party.
In the 1 minute we have left, as you continue to have to showcase yourself, to get to and have Canadians get to know you, what is their takeaway going to be? What are they going to say? Erin O'Toole stands for what? If he is Prime Minister, he will do this for me.
I'm one of them. One of the comments I get from many people when they meet me, they said, "Hey, you're just a regular guy." Yes, I am. And I'm here to fight for you. That, I think, is refreshing. We don't need a celebrity to be our Prime Minister. We need someone who has Canada pulsing through his veins. That's why I joined the military. I love this country. I say I'm a patriot. You know, some people look askance at you when you even use that word. We're a great country. We always have to get better. We always have to make sure there's opportunity for more people. Our party needs to involve and include more people in it. But let's also be proud of what we've accomplished as Canadians. We're an incredible country. I meet new Canadians in Mississauga and Surrey that feel blessed to be in Canada, to build companies and jobs and success. Let's not lose sight of that excitement we have for this country. We just have to get it back on track. And that's why I'm here. So if people say Erin O'Toole's a regular guy, the kid from Bowmanville, Ontario, I'm here for them. And I can relate to them. And I think that's important for a Prime Minister.
Mr. O'Toole, I want to thank you very much for participating with the Canadian Club and answering so many questions from our participants, and there were so many more. So we hope that you come back. We will do this again for another round. You know, best of luck to you and continuing to hold the government accountable for their actions during this unprecedented time of COVID-19. I want to now throw it to one of the board members of the Canadian Club of Toronto, Andrea Mandel-Campbell. I think Andrea is there. I think it's just a matter of little technology for her to get her camera on. There she is.
Yeah, apologies for that. Thank you so much to both of you for a really exciting and refreshing conversation. Adrienne, you always do a great job. And Erin, it's such a pleasure to see you again. Erin and I go way back, and he in fact inspired me to get into politics many years ago. And I'm so pleased to see you still inspiring Canadians as the official leader of the opposition. And really enjoyed a lot of your comments, which I think Canadians will be really interested in hearing about in terms of thinking about our country as a community, in terms of thinking about more than GDP growth, and in terms of and inclusivity, and you know, asking different members of the Canadian community to think about this party, whether they be Indigenous or LGBTQ. And people from across the country. So really enjoyed that, Erin, and appreciate that you chose the Canadian Club as the podium to address Toronto for your maiden speech as the leader of the opposition. So thank you so much again.
Thank you. And I love that book over your shoulder. That's how we first met, Andrea. And I was talking about it just the other day. So it's great to speak to this great Toronto audience from Ottawa, and only that would happen in COVID. So best wishes of health. Thank you, Andrea, Adrienne, and Anita, the AAA team, for bringing this to you today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Before everyone leaves, I just wanted to remind everyone that we hope you will join us for our next event next week. On Wednesday, November 4th, we'll host Mark Mation of CPP Investments and Michael Katchen from Wealthsimple for a discussion on how Canadians will build financial literacy at every age and stage of their lives. And I want to thank again Canadian Life and Waste Connections of Canada for sponsoring today's events. Our events would not be possible without our sponsors. So thank you again for your continued generosity. And lastly, to our AV supplier, Van Valkenburg Communications and livemeeting.ca for making it possible for us to come together with you virtually today. And to all our guests, we really appreciate your time today. Please stay safe and healthy. All the best.